everybody. We're going to look at today Proverbs 10:12 and 1 Peter 4:7 through 8. We're going to look at the concept because we talked last time about what love is from 1 Corinthians 13. Love is patient, love is kind, love is not envy, it is not boast, it is not proud, it is not rude, it is not self-seeking, all that, right? We defined it. Now we're going to see, well, what if love covers versus expose and exploit, what does that mean? What's the difference between covering and exploiting, or exposing and exploiting? What's the difference? And does that mean I can't confront? And I would say, absolutely, you do confront. Love confronts at times. There is definitely time to confront. Now, there's wisdom in how, when, and why you confront, who is given the information and who isn't, the steps and processes that would be a loving way to approach it. And the Bible talks about this and gives us standards. Now, that does not mean we're doing formulas, but God said there's a process that is respectful. Love gives honor to who honor is due and keeps and tries to not shame people. Shame is supposed to be individualized, right? For the person to self-regulate. When we use shame as a weapon on other people to shame people and to bring them down, we are acting in wickedness, not love. Anger is when we protect other people. We have healthy anger boundaries for ourselves to distinguish ourselves from other people so we don't enmesh with them and they become us and we essentially blend with them too much. We keep our individuality this way with healthy anger. We keep healthy boundaries in relationships with anger, and we defend others based on righteous anger. And anger has a strong, powerful emotion when it comes up, so it allows us to have the energy and the boldness to confront. So anger, God is even said to be angry at times. So anger is not bad. Anger is necessary for healthy boundaries. And most people who have like narcissism and all the different pathologies related to that and things like that have broken anger issues because they were abused usually as a child, or they have other, you just don't get there overnight. And then usually in that case, you're so racked with shame and you're using it on yourself to an unhealthy degree that you're consumed with it and you don't want anybody to know because you're so overwhelmed with the power of the emotion of shame that you feel like it will break you. There's no safe place where you can just like start letting those things go, and it's built up and built up and built up and built up that you're in an emergency anger boundary, like you just can't even process, and you'll be one of those people that stuff it, that you're so afraid like if somebody clicks you off, you'll just go bleh. And usually that's probably done behind closed doors to just the people closest to you, so they take the brunt of your anger and your unhealthy anger boundary. So anyway, so let's look at this. And we see love and hatred here in Proverbs 12:10. It says, hatred stirs up strife, but love covers all transgressions. So we have this foundational contrast and principle between love and hatred. And you can't really hate anything you don't care about. Like if you actually hate something, you actually care. Like if you just don't care about like some random stranger, you can just kind of laugh it off if they like say something wicked about you. You're like, I don't even know you. I don't care. Like I have no relationship with you. So the hatred is just like stupid, or like it's like distant. So it's not as penetrable. But when someone you love or you care about does something that makes you, mad, then that stirs up your hatred much more strongly and much more powerfully when they're close to you and they can hurt you and you need them, or you have some kind of like connection with them, that's so much more damaging and hurtful, right? But hatred versus love here in the contrast is it stirs up conflict. It stirs it up. So what does that mean? Like it's building it. It's stirring it, like stirring a pot, like making it worse. It's fanning a flame, if you will. So if you're fanning the flames of hatred, you're not walking in love, right? If you're talking evil about others, gaslighting people, your filter is projecting usually this is projecting with certain personalities that are having these problems. They're literally, they feel shame about how they're feeling, but they project it onto you. And then they gaslight you that you're doing the very thing that they are actually doing and feeling. And so, but they're projecting it on you to make you the bad guy and put everybody's attention on you and not them, in hopes that you won't actually see that it's them that has the problem, right? And so they project. So love, though, covers. So how does love cover all transgressions? And it has all there, kol, in the Hebrew. All sin, all transgressions, love covers it. And we see that the Lord in the Garden of Eden either showed us this in the concept of clothing, right? To coverings. Sukkot is a chuppah, and then there's a covering. Everything in that's related to the fall feast and Sukkot and everything past Yom Kippur and is all about coverings, and the sheltering and covering and under his wings. And he covers you. He covers your sin. So he forgives you. That's one meaning as sense. That's one sense of the meaning. There's an act of forgiveness of the offense. We bear each other's burden. We take the hit of somebody else's sin against us. We take the hit and we bear up under it for them. Somebody has to cover it. Now, the whole reason you see the Lord talk about in the New Testament and the Apostolic Scriptures, he talks about if you forgive someone, they're forgiven, whatever, because if somebody offends you, only you can forgive them, because the offense is between the two of you, right? And that's why you have the power to bear up under that sin and do what the master did and forgive and release, or you can hold it against them. But what does he say in the parable? If you hold it against them, I'm not going to forgive you either, because you have a lot of sins even worse to the Lord, right? So that's why love bears all things, right? We bear each other's burdens, right? Which means I take the hit from you and I bear up under it and I endure up under the bad, because I have hope and faith that God can work in and through his Spirit to change you and transform you, even the worst of you, even the ones that are hurtful the most to me, right? So that's what we can operate in then. So it covers, but what else? Like, what does that really mean to cover versus expose? And how is that different from confronting or not confronting? Should we expose everyone's dirty laundry? Well, do you, if we have the principle, love your neighbors yourself, do you want all your dirty laundry put out there for everybody? Do you want a confidence that you told someone in secret that you were bearing your heart and you needed that friend to come in and comfort you, that you were working on something and that you were being vulnerable and you had intimacy? Would you want them running and telling and betraying your trust and going and saying, they're a horrible person, look what they did? That's not covering, and that's not love. That's wickedness. That's selfish. That's actually, and then if you're trying to do it for the purpose of tearing that person down to make them look bad in other people's eyes, you're literally creating cancer of the mouth. Out your mouth, you're creating a cancer, and you're dividing brethren, and you're actually acting quite wickedly. That's exposure. And we see, remember in the story of, let's see, who was that? I can't think of the names right now. After the flood with Noah and the sons, and how it talked about it covers it up because of how Jewish culture, because children were hearing these stories, sometimes they covered some stuff. So basically covering the nakedness of I think it was Noah, his sons, the one went in and kind of did something wicked, right? But it was question mark, it doesn't really tell us. But it seems, because of a cross-reference elsewhere, the same exact language talks about the wife, the nakedness of the wife. So it may be that, sorry, there's a bug going around my head. It may be that the nakedness of the wife, Noah's wife, is really what was being covered up. Maybe they were, because they got drunk, remember? So after he had gotten out and he had gotten finally, oh my gosh, this bug is driving me nuts. Sorry. little gnats. Lost my train of thought, sorry. So anyway, Noah, he ended up drinking, right? He fell asleep. Something happened, but where it's kind of unclear. But it seems to be that maybe the shaming aspect is that you're going to cover the shame of the mom being exposed and naked. So the nakedness of the husband was the wife naked, right? So there must have been something going on there that maybe they were exposed. And so the other children, the other two, went in and covered, right? Covered over the exposure, right? They were exposed naked in some sense. And so it was covered. Whatever the nature of it, we're not given detail, but there's the cross reference that it has probably something to do with the mom being naked or exposed, and they covered her. That's at least my take on it, just from the language. But anyway, the idea is still covering and nakedness, right? And covering the exposure, right? Instead of shaming. So it's not using shame as a weapon. It's covering the shame, covering that, loving the person, doing something to not expose, not make them feel ridiculed and shamed, right? And so that's where that comes from. So 1 Peter 4:7-8 says, the end of all things is near. Therefore, be of sound judgment and sober for the purpose of prayers. Okay, sober doesn't mean, and it's different from our language of drinking in the spirit and stuff. Sober-minded means like think like with clarity. So it's emphasizing clarity. Be clear in your thinking and make righteous, sound judgment is righteous judgment. Don't judge falsely by what your natural eyes see, your natural ears hear, your natural fleshly inclination, or your jealousies, or your envies, or your strife, or whatever personal interest you have. Don't judge that way. Use your empathy. Understand that people that are operating wickedly, usually it's stemming from basic things of trauma and not having their own self-worth. Not, the devil has attacked them 10 different ways this Sunday, and so they end up hurting you, because hurting people hurt people, as the saying goes, right? So if you can employ your empathy, then you're not actually gonna be stuck yourself in everybody's beat me up, or come into a victim mentality and that kind of thing, and live from a place like that, right? And so the end of all things is near. Therefore, be of sound judgment and sober for the purpose of prayers. Now it says prayers, actually. It says prayer, but it's plural, ironically. So prayers. Okay, so that could be a multiplicity. Praying in the natural, praying in the spirit. Prayers. There's multiple kinds then, it means, right? So it has a broader sense for the purpose of intercession, in other words. Above all, keep fervent in your love for one another. Fervent in your love. Okay, so what does that imply if I have to be fervent in my love? Maybe it's that it's going to be a temptation in the flesh not to want to love, to be self-focused, to be self-serving, etc., because love covers a multitude of sins. There's power in knowledge of other people's weaknesses, that you can expose them, gaslight them, control them, and be more, quote, powerful than them, but it's a false power. It's a weak, false power that's tearing people down, and you'll never actually climb, and then you'll get more envious and more wicked as you go until it totally destroys you, or God judges it because you have hurt God's people who are, when they come in and are sincerely trying to love you, and you tear them apart and you spit them out because you're serving yourself. That's not love. So above all, keep fervent in your love for one another, because love covers a multitude of sins. Love doesn't come in and say and expose other people. It covers by keeping a confidence of a friend. It keeps things private. It even goes when your brother offends you. What does the scripture say? You cover their sin that when you bear under, you go to them and you say, you hurt me, you did this. And when they do that, then they're covering you. They're not hurting you. They're not reaching out to shame you. They're saying, I don't want to expose your sin to me, to everyone. I want to cover that, but I need to reconcile with you. So it's an act of love. And if you can't receive that way, and you actually take and you have no empathy for that you've even hurt that person and you don't even care, you're not acting in love, right? And you take it as weakness, you're really being wicked and not acting in love, right? You don't even understand it, but that's usually when you're dealing with a narcissist or you're dealing with a sociopath or a psychopath. And psychopath doesn't mean like we think murderer or something. It just means someone who is highly charismatic, highly likable on the outside. They can be a lot of CEOs and that run companies and big things are psychopaths, but they just aren't like murdering type. There's different kinds. And there can be like a social psychopath that is like doing good deeds and see how many good deeds I'm doing and I'm doing so great and look at me, look at me. You can have those too. So it's not always the crazy murderer psychopaths, which we kind of think of from movies. So those psychologies are people that have no empathy. They don't employ empathy. They can't even empathize. They feel nothing. And you really kind of, you can deal with people like that only in the sense of like you really can't confront those people because those people are so racked with shame that they can't receive from you. They just can't. They won't. Unless they desire to, they're not going to change unless they desire help and they seek it out or they're willing to open up to people who actually do love them, which most of them aren't. And so you can give them time, and if they won't, then you just can't. You just got to walk away. Anyway, so at the end of the day, love covers, it does not expose and exploit the knowledge that it has, right? And it doesn't, and we see this like online expose videos and all this stuff, right? That aren't even fake. They're just exploiting things to get their own attention. They don't even know the people involved. They don't even have firsthand knowledge. I mean, come on. Like, give me a break. Firsthand knowledge is the first thing that you have to have before you even can be a witness on anything. And number two, don't be a false witness, right? That would be gaslighting. Don't be like tearing people down and being a talebearer and a murmurer, because what are you manifesting? The snake behavior, lies, dividing brethren. Narcissists can't offer respect to anyone. They don't even have the capability of giving honor to anyone. They only want it for themselves, and it's kind of like a drug to them. And a lot of times, even in Christian circles, you see people that are drunk on power, and they get drunk on it. They are so consumed with power and the high they get from it that they go crazy in this area. They expose and exploit everything and everyone to tear everything down around them to build themselves up because they have no healthy anger. They're racked with shame, and they're just like this broken person that is doing everything they can to make themselves look powerful. And so they use people and abuse people around them just to make themselves powerful, but they're destroying the inner world of all the people that are closest to them. And you see it in their behavior because it's so, and they try to get you to do what our culture does. They will sit there and make you second guess your instincts, second guess the God-given instincts you have to be like, that's not right. And they'll start twisting things, and they'll start like a snake. They twist meaning and they nuance things, and then they push and pull, and then they always leave you hanging. Like, it's this crazy psychotic game that you just have to see that that's not love. That's not real love. And if you're feeling constantly emotionally degraded around people and gaslighted and torn down and never given any kind of reciprocity in honor to each other, because a relationship is you give them honor, they give you honor. And there's respect, there's mutual respect, there's real love, there's real intimacy. If it's only one direction, at the end of the day, you got to walk away because they're just not capable of it. And you got to have your own healthy boundary for that. And it takes really gutting down and having that moral fortitude to say, you know what? I'm sorry you don't control me. Because at the end of the day, they have to control you because that's their hit of power. That's their little drug. If they think that they're more powerful than you and control you, then they get that's their win. It's all W's and L's. It's all wins and losses in their world. They win when they control you, and they lose when they don't control you, and then they get mad and they gaslight you or they do whatever. So start recognizing real love. Realize that real love covers. Real love does not exploit and expose, but the difference is not always readily visible by just the external circumstances. The external, you could have two videos of people having the exact same situation, right? So it really has to do with the heart. But both videos can look very similar because you're going to be like, oh, both went in, both manifested, both got kicked out. Okay, those are the facts. The facts look the same, but it's all about the heart. Why did you go in? How did you go in? How did it flow? Were you really following the Holy Spirit, or were you just kind of like going in with the intent to expose and exploit the fact that you could confuse and have no relationship, and you know what's going to happen because you're not doing it with the right heart anyway? And if you're really not flowing, then there's not going to be unity in the body. You have to go in with the intent of unity. Because in unity, there's power, and in unity, you can teach and expose them to something higher and everything like that. But if your whole goal is not that, it's going to be quite evident. But not everybody's going to be able to see it just on internet, right? The internet. So it is what it is. But recognize that love covers, it doesn't expose and exploit. And so next time, let's look at one of the biggest tests of all, because we go through many tests. Many of us can go through hardships, but what's the test of power? And we'll talk about that next time from Proverbs 27:21.